Commander Velthok stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked down at the small blue planet below. New Sol spun slowly beneath him, its cities glowing like tiny sparks in the darkness. The planet looked peaceful. It looked weak. That was exactly what Velthok expected from a human world. "Sir, all ships are in position," his second officer reported. The voice came through the translator, turning alien clicks and growls into words Velthok could understand. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations. They had done this many times before. Today would be no different. Velthok touched the communication panel with one of his forearms. His voice went out to all 847 ships in the 3rd Dominion fleet. "Begin the attack. Show these humans why the Dominion rules the galaxy." The first orbital strikes hit New Sol at dawn. Bright flashes of light erupted across the planet's surface as energy beams tore through the human defenses. Their orbital stations died first, spinning metal wreckage that would never threaten another ship. Then the ground-based weapons disappeared, in balls of fire and smoke. Velthok watched it all happen on his main screen. The humans had built their defenses well, but they were nothing compared to Dominion firepower. In 3 hours, every military target on New Sol was destroyed. The planet lay helpless beneath his fleet. "Send down the landing forces," Velthok ordered. "Begin collection of useful resources." The resources he meant were people. The Dominion always needed more slaves. Humans were not the strongest species, but they were smart enough to be useful, and weak enough to control. Perfect slaves, really. Down on the planet's surface, Farmer Dongsu heard the explosions coming closer to his small town. He lived outside the main city with his wife Mi-young, who taught at the local school. They had 2 children, both still young. When the first Dominion ships appeared in the sky above their home, Dongsu knew their quiet life was over. "Take the children to the shelter," he told Mi-young. She was already moving, gathering their son and daughter. Her face was pale but calm. She had always been the strong one in their family. "What about you?" she asked. "Someone needs to warn the others," Dongsu said. He kissed her quickly and ran toward the town center. Behind him, the first Dominion soldiers were landing in the fields where he grew his crops. The soldiers were tall and covered in thick gray skin that looked like armor. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Their eyes were small and black, like a shark's eyes. They moved through the town quickly and efficiently, just like they had done on dozens of other worlds. In the main city, Engineer Tai Min was trying to get the emergency communication system working. The Dominion had destroyed most of the planet's communications, but some local networks still functioned. He worked beside Dr. So-jin, who was treating people hurt in the bombing. "Can you reach the other settlements?" So-jin asked. Her hands moved quickly as she bandaged a child's arm. The little girl was crying, but she tried to be brave. "Some of them," Taemin said. His fingers moved over the control panel. "But the signals are weak. The Dominion is jamming most frequencies." Around them, other people worked to help their neighbors. No one was panicking. No one was running away. Taemin found this strange. When the Dominion attacked other worlds, the people usually surrendered, quickly. They begged for mercy. They offered to serve their new masters. The humans of New Sol were different. They organized. They planned. They helped each other. 12-year-old Ho-jin crouched behind a burned-out vehicle and watched the Dominion soldiers march past. His parents had sent him to hide, but he could not just sit still while his world was being taken. He had found a small radio and was using it to carry messages between the groups of humans who were still fighting. "Uncle Taemin," he whispered into the radio. "The soldiers are moving toward the hospital, maybe 20 of them." Taemin's voice came back through the static. "Good work, Ho-jin. Stay hidden. We will handle this." Ho-jin smiled. The adults were treating him like he was important, like he could help. He had never felt so grown up and so scared at the same time. Velthok received the first reports from his ground commanders 3 hours after the landing began. He expected to hear that the humans had surrendered and were being processed for slavery evaluation. Instead, his officers sounded confused and angry. "The humans are not following standard patterns," reported Ground Commander Zektar. "They do not gather in open areas when we order them to. They hide in buildings and attack our patrols with primitive explosives. Explosives? Velthak's 4 eyes narrowed. Where did they get explosives? They appear to be making them from common materials. Farming chemicals mostly. Very crude but effective against our light armor. This was unusual. Most species either had proper military weapons or nothing at all. Humans seemed to fall somewhere in between. They could make weapons from almost anything. Are they causing significant casualties? Velthak asked. No, sir, but they are slowing our progress. Each building must be cleared individually. Some humans fight until they are killed. Others disappear into tunnels we did not know existed. Velthak made a sound that his species used for annoyance. Increase the pace. Use more force if necessary. These humans will learn to obey. But the humans did not learn to obey. Merchant Kyung-ho had run a small shop in the town where Dong-su lived. When the Dominion soldiers came to round up the townspeople, they expected to find frightened civilians, waiting to be captured. Instead, they found an empty building full of tripwires connected to homemade explosives. Kyung-ho and his family had spent the 3 hours after the orbital bombardment preparing their trap. His wife and teenage children helped him move everything, valuable to a hidden basement, then set up the explosives in the main shop. When the soldiers entered, the building collapsed on top of them. Kyung-ho watched from a distance as more soldiers came to investigate. They were angry now. They started burning buildings instead of just searching them. But the humans had prepared for this too. Most of the important people and supplies were already hidden in places the Dominion would not think to look. Dr. So-jin had moved her medical supplies to a cave system outside the city. Engineer Tae-min had set up his communication equipment in an old mine shaft. Teacher Mi-young had gathered all the children she could find and taken them to an underground shelter that had been dug years ago, just in case something like this ever happened. The humans had been preparing for war without even knowing it. On the 3rd day after the invasion began, Velthak realized that something was very wrong. His ground forces controlled less than half of the planet's major settlements. Worse, the humans were starting to coordinate their attacks. Small groups would hit Dominion patrols, then disappear before reinforcements could arrive. Sir, his intelligence officer said, we are detecting organized resistance activity in 17 different locations. The humans appear to be communicating through underground networks we cannot access. How is this possible? Velthak demanded. We destroyed their communication systems. They had backup systems we did not detect. Some appear to be very old, built into the planet's natural cave systems. Others are new but hidden inside civilian structures. Velthak stared at the tactical display showing New Seoul. Red dots marked areas of human resistance. There were more red dots today than there had been yesterday. The humans were not being defeated. They were getting stronger. This had never happened before. When the Dominion attacked a world, the native population either fought with everything they had and died quickly, or they surrendered and became slaves. The humans were doing something else entirely. They were adapting. Young Ho-jin continued to carry messages between the resistance groups. He had learned to move through the city using storm drains and maintenance tunnels that the big Dominion soldiers could not fit through. The adults had given him a real job now. He was mapping the locations of all Dominion patrols and reporting their movements. They changed their routes every day, he told Tae-min during one of their meetings. But they always go to the same places eventually. The water treatment plant, the power station, the food storage building. Smart boy, Tae-min said. They need those places to control the city. But if we know where they are going, we can get there first, Ho-jin finished. He was learning fast. Farmer Dong-su had become a different person since the invasion began. The quiet man who had grown vegetables and worried about the weather now led a group of 20 resistance fighters. They specialized in attacking Dominion supply convoys using weapons they made from farm equipment and mining explosives. His wife Mi-young was proving to be an excellent strategist. She had studied military history as a hobby, and now that knowledge was helping to keep her people alive. She planned the attacks while Dong-su carried them out. The convoy will pass through Miller's Valley tomorrow morning, she told him, pointing to a map spread on the floor of their hidden shelter. If you collapse the bridge there, they will have to take the long route through the hills. Where we will be waiting, Dongsu said, understanding immediately. Where you will be waiting, Mi Young corrected. I will be with the other group, hitting their communications relay on the other side of the valley. They will not be able to call for help. Dongsu looked at his wife with new respect. The gentle teacher had become a guerrilla warfare expert. Mechanic Junwoo knew he was going to die. The Dominion soldiers were only 2 blocks away from the communication center, and he could hear their heavy footsteps getting closer. Beside him, communications specialist Hye Jin worked frantically at the control panel, trying to boost the signal strength enough to reach beyond the Dominion jamming. How much longer do you need? Junwoo asked. He was watching the door while she worked. His hands shook as he held the rifle he had taken from a dead Dominion soldier. He had never fired a weapon at a living being before, but today he was prepared to do whatever it took. 2 more minutes, Hye Jin said. Her voice was steady, but sweat dripped from her forehead onto the control panel. The signal is almost strong enough to punch through their jamming field. Junwoo had been repairing vehicles and equipment his whole life. He was good with his hands and understood how machines worked. 3 days ago, his biggest worry had been fixing Mrs. Park's broken farming robot. Now he was about to sacrifice his life to send a message that might save humanity. Hye Jin had worked for the Colonial Communication Service since she graduated from university. She knew every frequency, every relay station, every way to send a signal across the vast distances between stars. She also knew that what they were trying to do was almost impossible. The Dominion jamming was too strong, and their improvised equipment was too weak, but almost impossible was not the same as completely impossible. Got it, she said suddenly. The control panel lit up with green lights. We have a clear channel to the relay station at Alpha Centauri. From there, the signal can reach Earth and all the major colonies. Junwoo could hear the soldiers in the Mai building now. They were searching room by room, getting closer every second. Send it now, he said. Hye Jin's fingers moved over the controls with practiced skill. The message she sent was short but complete. The coordinates of New Seoul, the size of the Dominion fleet, the number of ground forces, and their current positions. Technical data that military planners would need to mount any kind of rescue operation. But at the end of the message, she added something else. Something that came from her heart instead of her training. Remember New Seoul, she whispered into the transmitter. The words went out at the speed of light, racing across the galaxy toward Earth and the other human worlds. Behind those words came all the pain and anger and determination of a people who refused to surrender. The door exploded inward just as Hye Jin finished transmitting. Dominion soldiers poured into the room, their weapons raised. Junwoo stepped in front of Hye Jin and fired his rifle until it ran out of ammunition. The soldiers shot him down, then shot Hye Jin as she tried to destroy the communication equipment. They died knowing their message had been sent. That was enough. Commander Velthak learned about the transmission 3 hours later. His communication officers had detected the signal burst, but they had not been able to stop it in time. By then, the message was already halfway to Earth. What exactly did they send? Velthak asked. Complete tactical information about our fleet and ground forces, his intelligence officer reported. Locations, numbers, weapons, capabilities, everything. And a message. Remember New Seoul. Velthak felt a chill run through his body. He had made a mistake. He should have destroyed all communication equipment on the planet before beginning the invasion. But the humans had hidden their backup systems too well. Now Earth knew what was happening here. Sir, his second officer said, should we prepare for a human counterattack? Velthak almost laughed. With what? The humans have 12 ships in this entire sector. We have 847. Even if they gather every human vessel in known space, they could not match our firepower. But even as he said it, Velthak felt uncertain. Something about the human resistance on New Seoul had shaken his confidence. These people did not behave like any enemy he had ever faced. They were too organized, too determined, too smart. What if their space forces were just as unusual as their ground forces? The message reached Earth 17 hours after Hyejin died, sending it. It arrived at the Solar Defense Command Center during the middle of the night, but within minutes every important person in the human government was awake and reading it. Admiral Chang Min was the first military officer to see the message. He read it 3 times, then walked to his office window and looked out at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, 200,000 humans were being enslaved or killed by an alien empire that thought humans were weak. Chang Min had spent his entire career preparing for this day. Not this exact situation, but something like it. The day when humanity would have to prove they belonged in a galaxy full of stronger, older, more advanced species. He picked up his secure communication device and began making calls. Within 6 hours, every human world had received the message. Within 12 hours, the response was beginning to take shape. But it was not the response that Velthak or anyone else expected. There were no diplomatic messages, no demands for negotiation, no threats or warnings. The human government simply went silent. Their ambassadors stopped attending Galactic Council meetings. Their trade ships stopped following normal shipping routes. Their colonies stopped sending regular status reports. To outside observers, it looked like humanity had given up, like they were too shocked and scared to respond to the attack on New Sol. Velthak certainly thought so. "See," he told his officers, "the humans know they cannot fight the Dominion. They will accept the loss of one colony to save the rest." But down on New Sol, the survivors knew better. Shopkeeper Yun Ho had lost his store in the bombing, but he still had his emergency radio. He listened to the frequencies that civilians were not supposed to know about. Late at night, when the Dominion soldiers were sleeping, he could hear faint signals from human space. Ships were moving. Lots of ships. More ships than should have existed in the human fleet. Nurse Da Young worked in the makeshift hospital that Dr. So Jin had set up in the caves outside the city. She treated both human resistance fighters and Dominion soldiers who had been wounded in the fighting. The Dominion soldiers were confused by this. They expected humans to hate them, to want revenge. Instead, the humans followed their own rules of war. They helped anyone who was hurt, even their enemies. But Da Young noticed something in the way the humans talked to each other. They were not broken or defeated. They were waiting. "What are they waiting for?" a wounded Dominion soldier asked her in broken human language. Da Young looked at him with calm, sad eyes. "For their friends to come home," she said. The soldier did not understand, but Da Young did. She had grown up in a military family. Her father had been in the Colonial Defense Force, and he had taught her about military strategy. When an enemy attacks one of your bases, you don't rush in with whatever forces you have nearby. You take time to plan. You gather your strength. You make sure that when you strike back, you strike hard enough to end the fight permanently. Humanity was planning something big. Professor Sunja had taught military history at New Seoul University before the invasion. Now she was hiding in the ruins of her classroom, but she was still teaching. Young Hojin and several other children came to her every day to learn about famous battles and strategies. "Why don't the human fleets come to save us right away?" one of the children asked. Sunja pointed to a map of the galaxy on her tablet. "Look at the distances," she said. "New Seoul is very far from Earth and the major human worlds. But look at this." She showed them the shipping routes and military bases. The humans have been building a network of supply stations and hidden bases for decades. If they wanted to bring a large fleet here quickly, they would need to use those bases. "So why haven't they?" Hojin asked. "Because they are not bringing a large fleet," Sunja said quietly. "They are bringing something else, something that takes longer to prepare." Student Wu Jin had been studying engineering before the invasion. He helped Professor Sunja maintain their hidden communication equipment. Together, they monitored Dominion radio traffic and tried to understand what the alien forces were doing. What they learned worried them. The Dominion was getting nervous. "Their patrol patterns have changed 3 times in the past week," Wu Jin reported. "They are scanning space much more carefully than before, and they have stopped sending regular reports to their home bases." "They are afraid of something," Sunja agreed. "But what?" The answer came 2 weeks after Hyejin had died sending her message. Long-range sensors detected movement at the edge of the star system. Ships were coming, but they were still too far away to identify. Velthak stared at the sensor readings with growing alarm. The ships were not following normal flight patterns. They appeared and disappeared from sensors randomly, as if they were using some kind of advanced stealth technology. Worse, there were more of them than should have been possible. How many ships are we detecting? He asked his sensor officer. Unknown, sir. The readings are inconsistent. Sometimes we see 5 ships, sometimes 20, sometimes none at all. That is impossible. Ships cannot just disappear. No, sir. But these readings suggest they can become very difficult to detect. Velthak had ruled out the possibility of a large human counterattack because humans simply did not have enough ships. But what if they had ships that the Dominion did not know about? What if humanity had been building? Velthak's first clear look at the human ships came when they moved closer to his disabled flagship. Through the cracked viewport of his command center, he could see vessels that defied everything he thought he knew about human technology. The ships were beautiful in a deadly way. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. They moved without the clumsy momentum that characterized most spacecraft. Instead, they glided through space with the fluid grace of creatures born to swim through the void. Sir, his sensor officer said, his voice shaking, I am reading energy signatures I have never seen before. These ships are using technology that should not exist. Velthak said nothing. He was too busy trying to understand how humanity had hidden this capability from the rest of the galaxy. The Dominion had spies in every major species military. Their intelligence networks covered thousands of worlds. How had the humans built an entire fleet of advanced warships without anyone knowing? The answer came when Admiral Changmin's ship docked with Velthak's flagship. The human admiral walked onto the Dominion bridge surrounded by soldiers wearing armor that looked like it had been grown, rather than manufactured. Their weapons hummed with contained energy that made the air itself feel dangerous. Changmin was smaller than Velthak, as all humans were smaller than Dominion soldiers, but when he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. Commander Velthak, you are now a prisoner of the Earth Navy. Your ship and crew are seized under the laws of war. Do you understand? Velthak looked at the human admiral with new respect. 3 weeks ago, he would have laughed at the idea of surrendering to such a small, weak-looking creature. Now he simply nodded. I understand. But I must know, where did these ships come from? Our intelligence showed that humanity had only 12 vessels in this sector. Changmin smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see. Humanity has been preparing for this day for a very long time. Down on New Sol, the survivors emerged from their hiding places to watch human shuttles landing in the bombed cities. Resistance leader Jin Su stood beside medic Nari as the first human soldiers stepped onto the soil of their world. The soldiers were not what Jin Su had expected. They moved with the same fluid grace as their ships, and their equipment was far more advanced than anything the colonial defense forces had ever used. But when they spoke to the survivors, their voices were gentle and concerned. Are there wounded, people who need immediate medical attention? The squad leader asked Jinsu. Many, Jinsu replied. Dr. So-Jin has been treating people in the caves outside the city. We have limited medical supplies. Not anymore, the soldier said. He spoke into his communication device, and within minutes, medical teams were arriving with equipment that could heal injuries in hours instead of weeks. Nari watched in amazement as human medics used devices that seemed to regrow damaged tissue and cure infections instantly. How is this possible? She asked one of the doctors. Nanomedical technology, the doctor explained. We have been developing it for 20 years, but this is the first time we have used it in combat conditions. 20 years. That meant humans had been preparing for interstellar war since before first contact with most alien species. While they had presented themselves as peaceful traders and explorers, they had been quietly building the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Velthak learned more about human preparations during his interrogation aboard Admiral Changmin's flagship. The ship's interior was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls seemed to be alive, constantly shifting and adapting to the needs of the crew. The air itself felt different, charged with energy that made him feel more alert and healthy than he had in years. "Impressive, is it not?" Chang Min said, noticing Velthak's amazement. "We call it biomechanical integration. The ship is not just a machine, it is a living system that works with its crew." "Impossible," Velthak said. "No species has mastered biomechanical technology to this degree." "No other species needed to," Chang Min replied. "When you are smaller and weaker than most of your neighbors, you learn to be smarter and more creative. Humanity has spent centuries perfecting the art of survival." Chang Min led Velthak to an observation deck where they could see the remains of the Dominion fleet. Rescue ships were collecting survivors from the destroyed vessels while medical ships treated the wounded. Despite having just won a crushing victory, the humans were following their own strict rules about treatment of prisoners and civilians. "Why do you help our wounded?" Velthak asked. "We attacked your world. We killed your people." "Because that is what makes us different from you," Chang Min said. "We do not fight because we enjoy killing. We fight because we must protect our people. When the fighting stops, we go back to being healers and builders." But even as he spoke those words, Chang Min's expression remained cold and determined. The humans might be merciful in victory, but Velthak was beginning to understand that their mercy came with very strict conditions. Survivor Sung Ho had lost his home and his business in the Dominion attack, but he had survived along with his daughter Ye Jin. They stood together in the ruins of their neighborhood, watching human engineering teams begin the work of rebuilding. The rebuilding was happening impossibly fast. Human machines that looked more like living creatures than mechanical devices were clearing rubble and constructing new buildings in hours instead of months. The new structures were stronger and more beautiful than what had been there before. "Dad," Yejin said, "are these really the same humans who lived here before?" Sung Ho was wondering the same thing. The human soldiers and engineers who had come to liberate New Seoul seemed far more advanced than the colonists who had lived there before the attack. Their technology, their organization, their capabilities, everything was beyond what any colony world should have possessed. "I think," Sung Ho said slowly, "that we never really knew how strong humanity was. Maybe humanity did not want us to know." That evening, Admiral Chang Min held a meeting with the colony's surviving leaders. Farmer Dong Su was there, along with Dr. Sojin, Engineer Taemin, and several others who had organized the resistance during the occupation. "First, I want to thank you for your courage during the occupation," Chang Min said. "Your resistance efforts provided valuable intelligence and saved many lives." "We did what we had to do," Dong Su replied. "But I must ask, why did it take 3 weeks for help to arrive? With ships like yours, you could have been here much sooner." Chang Min was quiet for a long moment. "Because we were not just coming to rescue New Seoul. We were coming to end the Dominion threat permanently. That required different preparations." Dr. Sojin leaned forward. "What do you mean, end the threat permanently?" "The Dominion has attacked human civilians," Chang Min said. His voice was calm, but there was something in his eyes that made everyone in the room pay attention. "That cannot be allowed to happen again. Ever." Engineer Taemin understood first. "You are not just rescuing us. You are going to war." "We are already at war," Chang Min corrected. "The Dominion started it when they attacked New Seoul. We are going to finish it." Over the next several days, Velthak watched human ships arrive in the New Seoul system. Not just warships, but massive construction, vessels that began building orbital stations around the planet. Within a week, New Seoul was more heavily defended than most core worlds in the galaxy. But the humans were not building these defenses to protect just one world. They were building a forward base for military operations throughout the sector. "You are invading Dominion space," Velthak said during one of his daily interrogations. "We are responding proportionally to your attack," Chang Min replied. "You destroyed a human colony. We will ensure that you never have the ability to destroy another one." That could mean the end of the Dominion Empire. Yes, it could. The calm way Chang Min said those words was more terrifying than any threat. The humans were not angry or emotional about their revenge. They were approaching the destruction of an interstellar empire like it was a technical problem to be solved. Young Ho Jin had become something of a celebrity among the human liberation forces. The 12-year-old boy who had carried messages for the resistance was now helping to coordinate communication between the new orbital stations and the surface. The human officers treated him like a junior colleague rather than a child. Ho Jin, Admiral Chang Min said during one of their meetings, "I have a question for you. During the occupation, did you ever doubt that help would come?" Ho Jin thought carefully before answering. "No, sir. The grown-ups were scared, but they never stopped planning and fighting. I knew that meant they believed someone was coming." "Smart boy. And you were right. But I want you to understand something important. The people who came to help you are not the same humans who lived here before." "What do you mean?" Chang Min showed Ho Jin a display that illustrated the human expansion across the galaxy. The humans who colonized New Seoul were farmers and teachers and shopkeepers. They were people who wanted to build peaceful lives on a new world. The humans who rescued you are soldiers and engineers and scientists who have spent their entire lives preparing for war. So there are different kinds of humans? All humans are the... Commander Velthak's cell aboard the human flagship was more comfortable than his own quarters had been on Dominion ships. The humans provided excellent food, medical care, and even entertainment programs. They treated him like an honored guest, rather than a prisoner of war. This made everything more terrifying. Admiral Chang Min visited Velthak every day for what he called educational discussions. Today, Chang Min brought a tablet computer and sat down across from his prisoner with the casual manner of someone discussing the weather. "I want to show you something interesting," Chang Min said, activating the tablet. The screen displayed a tactical map of the galaxy, with thousands of colored dots representing different star systems. "Do you know what this is?" Velthak studied the display. Red dots marked Dominion territories, while blue dots showed human space. There were far more blue dots than any intelligence report had suggested. "This cannot be accurate. Humanity does not control so many systems." "Control is the wrong word," Chang Min corrected. "Humanity has settlements, outposts, and allies in all of these systems. We have been spreading across the galaxy for much longer than most people realize." Chang Min touched the screen, and the display changed to show ship movements over the past month. Blue arrows moved throughout Dominion space like antibodies attacking an infection. Each of these arrows represents a human fleet striking a Dominion military target. "As of today, we have eliminated 78% of your empire's offensive military capability." "Impossible," Velthak whispered. "The Dominion has thousands of ships, dozens of fortress worlds, entire sectors under our control." "Had," Chang Min said gently. Past tense. "Would you like to see the detailed reports?" For the next hour, Chang Min showed Velthak tactical recordings of human fleets destroying Dominion bases throughout the galaxy. Each attack was swift, precise, and overwhelming. The human ships moved with the same impossible grace that Velthak had witnessed at New Seoul, appearing from nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. But what struck Velthak most was the restraint. In every recording, human forces targeted only military installations and personnel. Dominion civilians were evacuated before attacks began. Surrender offers were always given before firing started. Wounded enemies received immediate medical attention. "You are fighting a war of conquest, but you act like peacekeepers," Velthak said. "We are not conquering anything," Chang Min replied. "We are removing a threat. There is a difference." Chang Min switched to a new screen showing casualty reports. The Dominion attack on New Seoul killed 200,000 human civilians and enslaved 50,000 more. Our response has killed approximately 2.3 million Dominion military personnel and captured 800,000 more. We consider this proportional." "Proportional?" Velthak could not hide his shock. "You have killed 10 times as many of our people as we killed of yours." "No," Chang Min said, his voice becoming cold. "We have eliminated 10 times as many of your military forces as you killed of our civilians. Every person we have killed was armed and fighting against us. Every person you killed was innocent." Changmin leaned forward, and Velthak saw something in the human admiral's eyes that made him understand why so many Dominion fleets had surrendered without fighting. The Dominion will never again have the ability to attack human civilians, Changmin continued. That is not negotiable. That is not subject to bargaining. That is what proportional response means. Back on New Seoul, survivors Minho and Yu Jin were helping to coordinate relief efforts for other worlds liberated from Dominion control. The humans had not just rescued their own colony. They were systematically freeing every world the Dominion had conquered in the past century. The liberated populations were learning the same lesson that Velthak was learning in his comfortable cell. Humanity was not interested in ruling other species. They were interested in making sure that no one else could rule them through force. The humans give us technology, medical supplies, and protection, Yujin said, as she watched human engineers help rebuild a liberated alien city. But they ask for nothing in return. Why? Minho had been thinking about the same question. Because they do not want to be emperors. They want to be left alone. But they have learned that being left alone requires making sure no one is strong enough to bother them. It was a subtle but important difference. Traditional conquerors wanted to control other species. Humans wanted to prevent other species from controlling anyone. Engineer Boram had been working with human technology specialists to understand the advanced systems used in their ships and equipment. What she learned changed her understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. They have been preparing for interstellar war for over 50 years, she told scientist Jae-sung during one of their evening meetings. Not just building weapons, but developing entire new fields of science and technology. Jae-sung looked at the technical specifications Boram had compiled. Biomechanical integration, quantum stealth systems, nanomedical technology, zero-point energy generation. Some of these theories existed when I was a student, but no one thought they could be made practical. The humans made them practical because they had to, Boram said. Look at this timeline. Every major breakthrough corresponds to a period when humanity encountered a more advanced alien species. Each time they met someone stronger than them, they went back to their laboratories and workshops and found ways to become stronger. So they were never weak, Jae-sung realized. They were just careful about showing their true capabilities. Boram nodded. They let everyone think they were harmless traders and explorers while they built the most advanced military force in galactic history. And they did it all in secret, using civilian research programs and commercial development projects as cover. It was a deception that had lasted for decades. While other species fought open wars and built obvious military forces, humanity had quietly revolutionized warfare itself. Dr. So-jin was treating Dominion prisoners of war in the medical facility that human forces had established on New Seoul. The alien soldiers were confused by their treatment. They received the same high-quality medical care as human patients, and their injuries were healed using the same advanced technology. "Why do you help us?" asked a wounded Dominion soldier through the translation device. "We are your enemies." So-jin looked at the soldier with the same gentle expression she had always used with her patients. "Because you are hurt, and I am a doctor. Those are the only things that matter right now." But later, when the soldier was sleeping peacefully under the influence of human medical technology, So-jin spoke with the human medical officer who was supervising the facility. "Your admiral says this is proportional response," she said. "But you treat our enemies better than the Dominion ever treated their own soldiers." The human officer smiled. "That is the point. We want everyone to see the difference between us and them. When Dominion soldiers go home and tell their families how they were treated by human doctors, what do you think they will say?" So Jin understood. The humans were not just winning a military war. They were winning a moral war. Every Dominion soldier who survived would return home knowing that humans could have killed them, but chose to heal them instead. It was a message that would spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity was powerful enough to destroy its enemies, but civilized enough to choose mercy when possible. Young student Wu Jin had been helping to maintain the communication networks that connected New Seoul to the growing human military presence throughout the galaxy. The scale of the operation amazed him. There are human fleets operating in 47 different star systems. he reported to Professor Sunja. And they are all coordinated perfectly. Every attack happens exactly when it is supposed to happen. Every supply convoy arrives exactly when it is needed. Sunja studied the data Wu Jin had compiled. This level of coordination requires planning that started years ago, maybe decades ago. But how could they plan for something so specific? They could not have known the Dominion would attack New Sol. They did not plan for this specific war, Sunja realized. They planned for the possibility of war with any major galactic power. Look at these contingency plans. They have detailed strategies for fighting every known military force in the galaxy. Wu Jin scrolled through files that outlined human strategies for warfare against dozens of different species and empires. Each plan was detailed, thoroughly researched, and adapted to the specific strengths and weaknesses of potential enemies. They studied everyone, Wu Jin said in amazement. Every species that ever traded with humans, every military force that ever met human ships, every government that ever signed a treaty with human colonies. They learned everything about us and planned how to defeat us if necessary. And they did it all while pretending to be peaceful explorers, Sunja added. Remarkable. Commander Velthak was beginning to understand the true scope of human preparations when Admiral Chang Min showed him intelligence reports from Dominion space. Human spies had been embedded in Dominion society for decades, gathering information and preparing for exactly this kind of conflict. You have agents in our government, Velthak said, looking at classified Dominion documents that somehow appeared in human intelligence files. We have friends in many places, Chang Min said diplomatically. People who believe that peace is. The courtroom on Earth was unlike anything Commander Velthak had ever seen. Representatives from 47 different species sat in careful rows, all of them focused on the small platform where he would soon give his testimony. The air hummed, with translation devices working in dozens of languages, creating a symphony of alien voices all speaking about the same terrible events. Velthak wore simple gray clothing instead of his military uniform. His forearms were not restrained, and his guards were polite and professional. The humans could have humiliated him, but they chose dignity instead. Even here at his war crimes trial, they followed their own rules about treating prisoners with respect. The prosecutor was Insu, a survivor of New Sol who had lost his wife and 2 children during the Dominion occupation. Velthak remembered the man's file from the intelligence reports. Insu had been a teacher before the invasion, specializing in child psychology. Now he stood before the Galactic Court wearing the robes of a legal advocate, preparing to argue for justice for his murdered family. Commander Velthak, Insu said, his voice calm but firm. You stand accused of genocide, enslavement, and crimes against civilian populations. How do you plead? Velthak looked around the courtroom one more time. He could see Admiral Chang Min, sitting in the observer section, watching with the same professional attention he had shown during their daily discussions. In the front row, survivors from New Sol sat beside survivors from dozens of other worlds that the Dominion had attacked over the years. I plead guilty to all charges, Velthak said. A murmur went through the courtroom. Many had expected him to fight the charges or claim he was following orders. Instead, Velthak had chosen to accept responsibility for his actions. You understand that the penalty for these crimes is death? Insu asked. I understand. But before you pass sentence, I request permission to give testimony about what I have learned during my captivity. I believe it will be valuable for the historical record. Judge Gyung, a young human diplomat who had helped establish the new Galactic Council, nodded her agreement. The court will hear your testimony, Commander. Velthak stood and faced the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. When he spoke, his words were broadcast across hundreds of worlds, carried by the same communication networks that humanity had secretly built over decades of careful preparation. 6 months ago, I commanded the 3rd Dominion Fleet in an attack on the human colony of New Sol. I believed this would be a simple conquest, like the dozens of other worlds the Dominion had taken over the past century. I believed humans were weak, primitive, and unable to resist our superior military power. Velthak paused, remembering the confidence he had felt as his fleet surrounded the small blue planet. I was wrong about everything. For the next 4 hours, Velthak described everything he had witnessed: the unexpected resistance of the human colonists, the arrival of the mysterious human fleet, the swift destruction of Dominion forces throughout the galaxy, and the careful, systematic way that humanity had dismantled an interstellar empire while following strict rules about civilian casualties and prisoner treatment. The humans did not defeat the Dominion through superior numbers or overwhelming force, Velthak testified. They defeated us through superior preparation, superior technology, and superior strategy. They had been ready for this war for decades before it began. In the observer section, young Ho-Jin sat beside his parents and listened to Velthak's testimony with fascination. The boy who had carried messages for the resistance during the occupation was now 14 years old and studying advanced military theory at the new academy that human educators had established on New Sol. Ho-Jin understood things about the war that most adults missed. During the occupation, he had seen how human civilians could transform into effective resistance fighters when they needed to. During the liberation, he had seen how human soldiers could show mercy to defeated enemies while maintaining perfect discipline and effectiveness. The lesson was clear. Humans could be whatever the situation required them to be. Dr. So-Jin was also in the courtroom, now serving as a medical advisor to the Galactic Council. She had spent the past 6 months treating refugees from throughout former Dominion space, helping beings recover from years of oppression and abuse. The medical technology that humans shared freely with other species had revolutionized healthcare across the galaxy. Diseases that had killed billions were now curable in hours. Injuries that had caused permanent disability could be healed completely. The humans had given more medical knowledge to the galaxy in 6 months than most species, developed in centuries. Why do they share so much? A patient had asked her just last week. Their technology could make them the richest species in the galaxy. So-Jin had thought about that question for a long time before answering. Because they understand that a healthy galaxy is a peaceful galaxy. Sick, desperate people start wars. Healthy, prosperous people build civilizations. It was a simple concept, but it had never occurred to most galactic governments. The humans were proving that generosity could be more effective than conquest. Velthak continued his testimony by describing the scope of human preparations that had been revealed during his captivity: the secret industrial facilities, the hidden research programs, the network of spies and allies that stretched across the galaxy. Humanity did not become powerful overnight, he explained. They spent over 50 years quietly building the capabilities they needed to defend themselves against any threat. While the rest of us fought open wars and built obvious military forces, humans developed technologies that made traditional warfare obsolete. Engineer Bo-Ram and scientist Jae-Sung were watching the trial from their laboratory on New Sol, where they worked with human researchers to develop new applications for the advanced technologies that had won the war. The biomechanical integration systems that made human ships so effective were now being used to build better hospitals and schools. The quantum stealth technology that had hidden human fleets was being adapted for peaceful exploration of dangerous regions of space. They never invented anything specifically for war, Bo-Ram observed. Every weapon system they used was based on technology developed for civilian purposes. That is why they were so effective, Jae-Sung agreed. They did not think like soldiers. They thought like engineers solving problems. The humans had approached warfare the same way they approached any other technical challenge, by understanding the problem completely, developing multiple solutions, and implementing the most efficient one. Admiral Changmin was called to testify about humanity's strategic goals in the war. He walked to the witness platform with the same calm professionalism that Velthak remembered from their daily discussions. Admiral, Prosecutor Insu asked, what was humanity's primary objective in this conflict? To ensure that no military force in the galaxy has the ability to threaten human civilian populations, Changmin replied. Secondary objectives included liberating worlds oppressed by the Dominion Empire and establishing a peaceful framework for interstellar relations. And have these objectives been achieved? Changmin consulted a tablet computer. As of yesterday, All Dominion military forces have either been destroyed, captured, or have surrendered. Former Dominion colonies have been offered independence and protection, while they establish their own governments. A new Galactic Council has been formed with representatives from all species, operating under a charter that prohibits military attacks on civilian populations. What happens now that the war is over? Humanity returns to peaceful development and exploration, Chiang Min said. Our military forces will remain active to enforce the new galactic peace, but our primary focus will return to science, trade, and cultural exchange. Judge Ge Young asked the question that everyone was thinking. Admiral, what if another species decides to challenge the new order that humanity has established? Chiang Min's answer was simple and terrifying. They will discover that humanity's capacity for proportional response has no upper limit. The trial continued for 3 more days, with testimony from survivors, military experts, and government officials from across the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. The Dominion had committed systematic crimes against civilian populations for over a century, and humanity's response had been both overwhelming and legally justified. But the trial was not really about guilt or innocence. Everyone knew that Velthak and his fellow war criminals would be executed. The trial was about education. It was about making sure that every species in the galaxy understood the new rules. Merchant Kyung Ho had reopened his business on New Seoul, but now his customers included beings from dozens of different worlds. The trade networks that humans had established after the war were more extensive and more profitable than anything that had existed under Dominion rule. The humans do not tax our trade, explained a merchant from one of the liberated worlds. They do not demand tribute or special privileges. They only require that we follow their rules about peaceful conflict resolution. Kyung Ho found this approach to governance fascinating. The humans had become the dominant military power in the Yik galaxy, but they use that power to create opportunities for other species rather than controlling them directly. They are teaching us that